Okay, welcome. Today, Lauren, Christine, and I are going to be talking about gates 37, and sometimes it's actually 37 and 63. So we are going to be exploring around and seeing what we can find and learn and then play with over the next period, 2 periods, 5.5 days. So, Christine, if you could start us off by telling us about these gates.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lois. Yeah, so gate 37, we're not quite there yet at the time of this recording, but when we upload it, it will be about the time, which is February 24th, I think, to March 1st. So, gate 37 is the gate of friendship. That's the human design name for it. The hexagram is the family, right? And it lives in human design. This gate is in our emotional solar plexus. So it's yet another of these emotional gates that we've been, flowing through in this section of the human design mandala. And so this particular gate is the only gate that attaches or links to the heart gate in the human design system, right? So there's this real tribal connection between the emotions to the heart through community, right? That's what this channel is called. And so this time, this period of time will be probably very focused for people on relationships, right? Especially these close in relationships. Um, and so just paying attention to that, like noticing, do things come up around your sense of self as opposed to how you are in the community, like tribal, this is a tribal energy, so these ideas of support, how are you supporting others? And very key to this energy is, do you feel supported in return, right? And so that may be a thing that comes up in this time of like, hey, I don't really feel like I'm being supported. And again, in the world that we're in at the moment with everything in upheaval, this piece about relationships and how we relate to the other and how we relate to ourselves, I think is probably going to be really noticeable this year.
Yeah. And it may be our one safe place. So by spending time right now on our family and those relationships, that it's also one place where we can take action on immediately, right?
Right.
I was thinking while you were talking, Christine, the word discernment came up of discerning, how do I feel about this? Um and also this like I kind of see these gates as they're opening and the sun's transiting, which is interesting. It's like the spotlight shining on this one aspect of our being, and so this kind of illuminates what's going on in there. And hexagram 30 and 37, when we look at Hilary Barrett's translation, she calls it people in the house. Like, who are the people in the house? And we all have families by choice, and we have families that we have biologically. But she talks a lot about the boundaries of the home you inhabit, the boundaries you have with the people in those relationships. And so I wonder if we might be bumping up against some of that.
I'm thinking too, we might be bumping up against that the family has been in transition for quite some time. And it's changed so much from when we were children to for children now. And there's almost this redefining what does it mean to be in family. And so looking at so what is it in family that supports us, right? And so what are the parts that are really supportive? And those are the parts that we want to nurture, and maybe taking a look at some of the long-term traditional views of family and saying what works for us and what doesn't work for us.
Hmm.
Because like if we're trying to force ourselves into a certain model, we're not necessarily going to be happy. So what's the way? Because every family is different. So like, what's your way as a family?
Yeah, that's really interesting, Lois, because this gate 37 is a key gate in the paradigm that we're actually living in right now. There are 400-year cycles that we exist in. And so we're living at the very, very end of the cross of planning. And in 2027, we'll be moving into this cross of the sleeping phoenix. But right now, in the cross of planning, gate 37 is part of that, right? And it is this examination of the way that we've done things, right? It was the way we did things for a long time. And now we're at this moment where we're like, hey, we're not actually going to probably stay in relationship in that way, right? We're going to re-examine these boundaries and these borders. And this gate 37 actually has, each gate in our solar plexus carries a particular fear. And it comes across as a nervousness from our emotional center. And the fear in the 37th gate is kind of this fear of getting trapped in these tribal roles, right? And so I think it's really interesting that we're having this discussion in this very moment in the process of the progression of humanity.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things coming up from what both of you are talking about. But the first thing that comes up is how well this all, and of course it does align with the astrology of this time, that we really are in a period of questioning our belief systems, revisiting them, and remembering why we believe what we believe, and then looking at it more carefully and saying, is that still true? Is that still true for me now? Do I really feel my role as a partner needs to be like this, or my role as a mother? I mean, all three of us here hold that role, yet that's something I think we continue to come back to and say, what does that really mean? What does that mean for me to be a mother of an infant is very different than a mother of a 30 or 40-year-old, right? But we're still holding that role. So maybe all of us, like, what does it mean to be a son? Or what does it mean to be a sister? These are all the themes I would think that might be lighting up, I think, in these days to come.
I think also the role of who am I as a man or a woman
Yeah.
is coming up too, because there's been huge shifts in that. And there's a lot of tension of that around that in society right now, with more traditional perspectives on masculinity and femininity, sort of bumping up against sort of more progressive perspectives. And and then there's like tension between sort of the poles there, and that shows up places like Facebook, where people are criticizing each other for their way of raising their family or having a family. And that's probably a sign of this coming to an end, that's becoming sort of more bitter almost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Richard Rudd talks a little bit about that in the Gene Keys, about this particular energy and that balance between the yin and the yang, right? That balance between the masculine and the feminine that has been so out of balance in modernity, right? And how and you can see it in the world, right? As we've pushed to bring that more into balance in the various ways that we're doing it, there's resistance, right?
Yeah.
There's so much resistance. And so I think that some of that may come up in these next few days as well, right? Like, where is that balance, right? Because we don't really know as modern humans. We've never really lived it. So it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think any growth feels uncomfortable, right? No matter how good it is for us. In fact, I think that can be pretty assured that if you're uncomfortable, you're growing. So unless you just get caught in your own loop of suffering. But I was thinking there's still one more thing that Hillary Barrett taps on in regards to hexagram 37. And that is these boundaries of how far do they extend? What is home? How do we define home? And it's interesting. I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago because I was traveling with my husband in Germany, and we both felt like, oh, we really didn't want to unroot from this home. But I also realized we bring home with us. Our home is also in our heart. It's how we choose to be and how we choose to be with others. And that might be something really interesting just to play with that this week. What is that? What does that really feel like to you?
And what does
Yeah.
it feel like for the people that you live with?
Yeah.
Too, is just to be curious about um, like how everybody's feeling in this situation. And from out of that I mean, it could come new ideas about how you want to be together.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just, as you were talking about Hillary Barrett, I was looking at the hexagram and it's the trigram of wind over fire,
Mhm.
right? Which, again, you need a little bit of oxygen to create the fire. You want, again, talk about boundaries. You get too much wind, there's no boundary there, right? It's out of control. So I just think it's an interesting visual from this hexagram. Like, yeah, little is one thing, a lot is another. What do we do here?
Yeah, and I'd like to just point out, because for our listeners, I think what's really beautiful here is you may resonate with one of these lenses. You might really resonate with human design, you might really resonate with Ching keys, or you might really resonate with the I Ching and hexagrams. And that this is what is so wonderful is you get to choose, and they're all the same. They're all the same, coming from the same truth and the same wisdom. But maybe one leads you in a little more deeply, or might speak more to your learning style and your ability to comprehend this energy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Lauren, was there a Gemmo that comes up for you at all in this?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me, Christine, because I was thinking about boundaries, and I was thinking about the heart, and I was thinking about relationships. And lilac is the extract that comes up for me. So it's really interesting on a physical level when it's taken in, a full dose. It really detoxes the heart. But on an energetic level, when it's taken just in one drop and meant for the nervous system, it helps really help us decide it's one of those what's mine, what's yours, and what's healthy and what's not for me. And so I think it could be really supportive as we're looking at this in really discerning what's going to serve us in these relationships, in this home, in these ecosystems of relationships that we establish.
Hmm, interesting. I don't know if it's true of the Gemmo, but I know that the lilacs at my mom's place are tenacious. They really were like
They
even
are.
even in the like hardest drought that they've had up in a long time, that lilac, it wasn't looking its best, but it was going, right? And so it's just
Sure.
like, I don't know if that's true for the Gemmo, but in these times that sounds like it might be kind of a good little thing too.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And there's a way to help support the Gemmo there too. In like during the day, is just dropping out of your head and into your heart, especially when something comes up that maybe feels a little bit difficult. It's just to just take a minute and quiet down and just drop your consciousness down into your heart and let your heart tell you where you're going rather than your head.
Yeah. Yeah,
Good
building that
advice for these
relationship with
times.
self. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Um, Just one other note that might be fun to play around with. This gate 37 is very much, this channel is very much known to be a foodie channel. Like people love to sit down to a meal together, and this energy is very much about sharing food and being present with one another around food. So that might be a fun thing to add to your 5.5 day stint, is make some real plans to enjoy food together with people you love.
Hmm.
Yeah. Should we flip over to gate
Yeah,
63?
let's do it.
Cool. All right, so gate
Oh, I'm
63.
not sure,
Oh,
Christine. I'm not sure. I have a lot of doubt about this one.
yeah. Well, Well, good. Perfect timing.
I couldn't help it.
Yes, exactly. Trust me, I have a lot of doubt about it too. It is the gate of doubt, and it lives in our head center in the human design body graph. And so this is the only gate for quite some time that has been outside of this emotional solar plexus, right? So we're going to be in this head energy, this mental energy space for a bit from March 2nd to the 6th. And so the thing that may come up for us in this period of time may harken back to what we were talking about when we first started this process back in when we were in the root pressure gates. Because this gate 63 is a head pressure gate, right? And so this pressure to think through things and to be skeptical and to doubt and to not know and to be uncertain, right? Like that is very much this pressure of like, I don't know, right? So we may really feel that during this period of time. And it is a logic gate. Like this is kind of when we think of the classic left brain, right brain, this is the left brain energy, right? This is wanting to make sense of things, wanting things to be rational. You know, it's bright and brilliant, but it also can be a bit rigid and not wanting to let things be unknown, right? Being imaginative, being creative, like it has a trickier time with that. So just to be aware of. Also, it's going to be a collective gate, right? So we're going to be back in this space where we're probably looking out a little bit more at the world and not just our close in people and not just our own process. So, um, yeah, those were a few things about 63.
I don't know about you two, but my head was already feeling that. I was like, oh, this is going to be really, really a tough one on my poor little head.
Yeah.
When I looked into what Hillary Barrett had to say as far as hexagram 63, her question she was asking was, what now? This isn't about do I do something, it's you're already in it, right? And we all are already in it. There's no going back. So now what's next is a little bit of the question that comes up with this hexagram. And that might be I was thinking, how do we counterbalance all this head energy? But that might be a kind of interesting pivot rather than like, oh, did I do the right thing? But focusing on what next. What would be a kind, a compassionate next step for me?
That's interesting because when I was thinking about this, there's this desire to create certainty, to stop the tension, to take it away, which in the end is actually impossible. But the being able to get curious, because when I was reading what Richard Rudd had to say about this, is like with the repressive, like there's this closing down and finding the dogma. So I've got the answer, and then that'll take it away because I have the answer. But that then sort of stops us, right? But if we get curious, we can use this energy to create something new.
Mm.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and you mentioned like this being a collective energy, Christine, and looking at there's this collective energy that affects us, and looking at is this mine, or is this just what's happening around me, and it's having this impact of this tension that I'm feeling, this anxiety, or is it something that's personal to me? And he was pointing out that if it's getting personal, then it's destructive rather than creative.
Mm-hmm.
So being very aware of where's this coming from and what can I do with it?
Yeah. Well, and doubt is a path to inquiry, right? Like he talks about in his thing about the true skeptic, right? Like a true skeptic is skeptical of their own skepticism, right? Right? And so, and we see this all around us where people, I think about scientists, right? Where they refuse to ask a particular question because they already know the answer, right? And so if we don't doubt our own knowledge, then we stop inquiring, we stop asking questions, we stop being curious, right? And this is the balance up here in the head center between this gate 63 of I know and or I think I know, or maybe I know, and gate 64, which is I'm not sure, right? And so like it's just like they're going back and forth all the time. I mean, even the hexagrams themselves have this little, I don't know the I Ching well enough, but there's this weird little like playfulness here in the 63 and the 64 and the hexagrams. Gate 6, I mean, hexagram 63 is after completion and gate 64 is before completion. And 64 is the last hexagram in the cycle. So there's something there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering how this one will feel coming out of gate 37, right? So we've just had this time of assessing family and relationships, and then in comes the doubt, right? So is that doubt going to be like, oh, did I do the right thing with that? Or did I, end a relationship I shouldn't have? Or, I wonder how much it might be reflective of the gate before it. Any thoughts on that, Christine? How they relate to each other?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because again, we've been in this long stretch of feeling in our emotional center, right? And then we're flipping back into this
Yeah.
head energy, which again is where our world, where our society wants us to be, right? It always
Right.
wants us to be in our head energy, right? So I think it might be an interesting like dichotomy to be like, oh, like last week I was feeling things, and
Mhm.
this week I'm thinking things, and somewhere in between is the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And it leads me right into the Gemmo I was thinking of, because you would think I would go with a central nervous system head energy Gemmo, but I think that's not what we need. The energy is already there, and I think we need to bring harmony in. So actually, I was thinking about silver line because it is a beautiful connector of the parts of ourselves, and particularly connecting head and heart. Um, so, and if anyone hasn't tried Gemmos out there that's listening, this would be the one to dip your toe in, because it's just so lovely and it can be so supportive right now. Its key in essence is reconnection, but I think that's what I would want a dose of when if I keep getting in my head. I want to be able to reconnect with the other parts of myself.
Yeah. I was thinking about the going back and forth, and there's a sense of paradox here. There's both and happening. Like we're moving from this to that, and then I'll move back the other way. And to be able to say, well, both exist, and both actually I can live and exist in both of them. And so not to get quite so disrupted by it, recognizing that it's just going back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
and just to sort of pay attention, what's the information that's coming from either side, and how to move forward. Because there again, like Richard Rudd talks about this 63, 64 as being the opening to this sort of Mobius strip. We're going to go around again, which we've talked about. We do this set of sun transits, and next year we go through the same sequence of the gates, but it'll be different because we'll have had this another year of experience. So there's this opportunity to get, more breadth and more depth in our life experience, and in holding the paradox that allows us to hold that, because there's more space.
Yeah.
I love that picture, Lois. That's very encouraging. We could all use more space right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it also, when you were saying this or that, I think also it really makes me think very much of, Ra, the guy that channeled human design. Most human design language is what we would call the shadow state. Like Richard Rudd's work picks
Mhm.
up mostly those shadow frequencies are the names of the human design gates, right? Because we are mostly not self, right? Like this is how we are on the planet. We're made up of a lot of things, a lot of which is shadow, right? And so the language came through in human design in very kind of a shadowy way. But as Ra went on, he recognized that, and he was trying to bring some more of the judgment out of it. And at one point, he started talking about this or that, right? Because everybody wanted to make something good or bad, right or wrong, left or right, right? And he kept trying to refocus people into this idea that it isn't, like there is no judgment here, about it's all here for us to learn from. It is just this or that, right? And so I just like that language about just dropping the judgment, because we do it naturally, we're trained to do it, we're conditioned to do it, but it doesn't help us. It hasn't ever helped us.
Great suffering.
Yeah.
Did you have
And I
any?
guess as I'm thinking, sorry, it took me a minute. The reason this relates to 63 is it's all head energy, right? Like our judgment, our thinking something is good or bad is completely out of our head. We don't make those things, those judgments from our body.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing during gate 63. Pay attention to that, right? How much more are you maybe in your head making these assessments of the world that really have no true use, or they're not helping, right? So,
Yeah. But they're just experiences, and then we qualify them as good, bad, or
right.
terrible. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a very full discussion today. Yeah, thank you. Right. So I'm going to thank you for being with us, and we'll hope you be with us the next time when we talk about the next two sun transits.